Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and welcome to week 12 of urban management. Now, first of all, do forgive me for not turning on my camera due to technical difficulties. Hopefully, it's not going to disrupt the presentations and discussions that we will be having today. Another point that I'd like to mention is that this is our last meeting before we go into the Eid holidays. Yay! And so one little thing that I'd like to point out is that the classes will commence at week 13. So the Eid holidays do not count towards the 16 weeks of our class, and so therefore I will adjust the workshop module dates accordingly. Right. As usual, we have two presentations. Today. And I think I have enabled screen sharing. Just let me double check. It should be. I think that's enabled already. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We'll return to the QR code if any of you missed or haven't marked your attendance for joining in because you were late to join. So I'll stop sharing my screen now. And yes, screen sharing is enabled. So to the presenters, the floor is yours.
All right, sir. Can you see my screen, sir?
Yep, clearly.
All right, so good afternoon, Mr. Prananda and friends. My name is Garibaldi, and today I'm going to present my presentation on the topic of poverty in cities in North Jakarta City case study. So before moving into the possible solutions, maybe I will review a bit about my case study. So the case study is located in North Jakarta City. It has the highest percentage of poor people between the municipalities in DKI Jakarta. And some of the issues found are the informal settlements, the waste pollution, and also the lack of clean water. And for the social, are the social conflicts because the inhabitants are mostly not from Jakarta origin, not originated from Jakarta. And then also moral degradation in children, including drug abuse, and also high crime rate. And the economic issues are the low and uncertain income due to their mostly working in informal jobs. So that's the brief review from my case study. And today we're going to talk about the plausible solutions, which comes from the best practices, the proposed solutions, and the strategic action plan. So I took two best practices. The first one is from Rio de Janeiro in Brazil, which is called the Favela Bairro program. Favela Bairro, meaning the shantytown to neighborhood, was a program made to tackle the problem of poverty in shanty towns, which are the informal settlements without any property or usage rights. The program carries out urban interventions without driving out the poor or imposing the urbanistic standards of the formal city. So in its core, the program aims to make the inhabitants of the shanty towns fully fledged citizens within their own rights and duties. The program provides stable and occupancy for the current inhabitants, provide good paid access to water and sanitation services, and improve road and provide access to telephones. This program implement the favela or the shantytown upgrading, the irregular subdivisions formalization, monitoring and evaluation, sanitary education, and the institutional development. This program targets or the beneficiaries are the shantytown's inhabitants, which includes 1.4 million people in 1990. The program has extended to shantytowns of 500 to 2,500 families in 1996. This program has achieved results such as reaching 400,000 inhabitants in the year 1999, or the first year of its implementation. Beneficiaries didn't need to move out from their origin habitat, and they have transformed the inhabitants from favelados or shanty dwellers into citizens. They have provided paved streets, cable cars, public water, and electricity networks. They have reforested uninhabitable zones, and these interventions costing less than 4,000 US dollars per household. The second best practice I took is from Berlin, Germany, which is the Social City District Management Program. So Berlin is a city filled with areas of segregation and exclusion. Some central zones lose almost 20% of their population every year. The economically capable people left the city, and the ones who remain are the unemployed, the elderly people on welfare, those who are not, and those who are not German in origin. The program aims to fight social exclusion and to improve living standards through the activation and intense participation of residents and local stakeholders, combined with investment in the neighborhood's infrastructure. So this program has three main goals: reducing the segregation in the city, reducing social, cultural, and economic exclusion of ethnic and social minorities with specific support for women, and improve the living standards. So in its implementation, the program created a partnership-based approach combined with the voluntary involvement. They have also implemented cross-departmental coordination, established local office and neighborhood management team as a contact point, and creating neighborhood councils, which represents residents' interests, so decide funds usage and focus of neighborhood development. So the beneficiaries of this program are the public, the economic and social partners, groups of residents, NGOs, and dynamic individuals, including the population of 189,000 people, 55.9% of whom are non-Germans. And the program resulting in reduced social exclusion, slowed down segregation, active community participation in urban planning, improved living conditions, and increased possibility of employment. And from those two best practices, I formulate these proposed solutions. The first one is the community participation. Here we want to engage the poor community to actively participate in the development of the poor areas. The solution aims to view the needs from the community's perspective and collect aspirations for the development focus. Here we view the poor community as the partner beneficiaries. We're going to create neighborhood management teams involving representations from the poor. We create local neighborhood offices in the poor areas as the center of communications and involve the community representations in decision making. The second solution is a multi-institutional partnership. Here we created a partnership between the poor community, local government, and NGOs. The solution aims to pool resources and capabilities from different institutions. The poor community's role is in providing human resources and aspiration, the NGO's role in social preparation and community organizing, and the government's role in providing legal actions such as permit and policy making, as well as funding. We also wanted to create a transparent supervising commission consisting of representations from each of those institutions. The third proposed solution is the community empowerment. So we want to empower the community's capabilities in many basic skills, and the solution aims to increase the community's employment possibility in formal jobs. Here we're going to conduct literacy, communication, finance, problem solving, and cooperation training for all dwellers. The fourth proposed solution is the environmental restoration. Here we want to restore the environment through cleanup acts and planting culture. We aim to create a healthy environment for the dwellers' health and ensure the sustainability of the neighborhood. Here we're going to conduct sanitary and planting education for all dwellers, create a consistent and efficient waste collection system, create waste banks to discourage littering, create planting programs and competitions to encourage habituation of planting in the community, and conduct large-scale cleanups of water bodies and trash piles found in the neighborhood. And the last proposed solutions are the formalized settlement. Here we want to provide legal and formal occupancy for the poor community through infrastructure and service improvements. We aim to reconstruct the informal settlements into formal settlements without driving the poor, such as taken from the Brazil case study. And we're going to provide clean water and electricity network, as well as adequate paved road, create low-income urban settlement policies that ease the legalization of dwellers' home ownership rights. We conduct community home improvements and also microfunding taken from the dwellers to increase their sense of ownership. And from those proposed solutions, I created the strategic plan with the vision, welfare improvement of the poor community through partnership, empowerment, and healthy living condition. The first strategy is partnership between the poor community, the local government, and NGOs. Here we want to socialize the programs towards the stakeholders. Then we can create neighborhood management teams and supervision commissions. And finally, we can start to formulate a community-based development plans. The second strategy is community empowerment and increasing job opportunities. Here we're going to conduct literacy, communication, finance, problem solving, and cooperation training, and also sanitary and planting education. The third strategy is creation of healthy living condition. Here we're going to conduct large-scale waste cleanups, forming an efficient waste collection system, creating waste banks in every poor community, introduce planting programs and competitions. The last strategy is the formalization of informal settlements. We're going to provide clean water, electricity, and paved road. We're going to formulate the low-income urban settlement policies and also conduct community home improvements. And these are the planned locations of the strategic plan. We have 4 main areas. The first one is the Penjaringan sub-districts, which includes 7 poor villages. And then we have the Ancol sub-district, which has 5 poor villages. And then we also have the Tanjung Priok sub-district with 1 poor village and 1 in the West Kelapa Gading sub-district. So we have 4 activities in this action plan. The first one is the partnership creation. Here we're going to create a harmonious partnership between the stakeholders. And we're going to create this as soon as possible, which will be conducted in the first year. So we can use this activity as we conduct this, we create a partnership that can become a strong foundation for the other activities to be implemented later. And the stakeholders are the poor community, local community leaders, non-governmental social organizations, sub-district and district office, and also the Ministry of Social Affairs. The second activity is the community empowerment. Here, the goal is to increase the poor community's basic skills and capabilities. And because community empowerment is a long process to conduct, we're going to start it in the second year after we create the partnership up until the 10th or the last year of the program. And the stakeholders are the non-governmental social organizations, family welfare empowerment, or PKK, Directorate, and also the Directorate General of Early Childhood Education, Basic Education, and Secondary Education. The third activity is the creation of healthy living condition. The goal is to create a healthy and sustainable environment for the well-being of the community. And we want to conduct this as soon as possible after we create the partnership. So it will be done in the second year. And the target duration of the activity will be 3 years. So after 3 years, we have created a healthy living condition. And the stakeholders are the poor community, non-governmental environmental organizations, and also the Department of Environment and Forestry. The last activity is the formalization of informal settlements. The goal is to upgrade the informal status of settlements into formal without driving out the poor. And we're going to conduct this between the activity of creating a healthy living condition. So we want to make sure we create the healthy living condition first, then we can start formalizing the informal settlements. This activity will be conducted in the 4th year up until the 10th year or the last year. And the stakeholders are the poor community, the housing provision institutions, banks, and also the Department of Settlement and Regional Infrastructure. So here are the steps in those action plans in detail. The first activity, partnership creation. First, we want to socialize our program to the poor community, the NGOs, and the local governments. Then we can start creating a partnership agreement with the stakeholders. And then we can formulate a neighborhood management teams and establish local offices as well as the supervising commissions. And finally, we can start formulating the community-based development plans. The second activity, community empowerment. First, we want to formulate the education and training programs with the neighborhood management teams. Then we can socialize those programs towards the community. And finally, we can implement the program, including the literacy, communication, finance, problem solving, cooperation, sanitary, and planting education or training. The third activity, creation of healthy living condition. First, we want to determine the areas in need of waste cleanups with the neighborhood management teams. Then we can formulate the cleanup phases, procedures, and actors. And then we can start socializing the program towards the community and non-governmental environmental organizations. And finally, we can start conducting the large-scale waste cleanups. And then we can formulate and implement the efficient waste collection systems and waste banks. Also formulate and conduct socialization and implement the planting programs and competitions in the community. And the last activity is the formalization of informal settlements. First, we want to determine the infrastructure needed by the neighborhood management teams. We then can start formulating, conduct socialization, and implement the infrastructure network plan. We also can formulate, conduct socialization, and implement the low-income urban settlement policies. And after that, we can formulate and conduct socialization of the home improvement programs towards the community, the banks, and also the housing provision institutions. And finally, we can implement the home improvements program to the poor community. And that's the end of my presentation. Thank you for your attention. If you are wanting to ask, please feel free. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary. That was really excellent. I do have one tiny question in mind, but before I do that, I'd like to give the chance, I'd like to give the opportunity to your peers first. If anybody has any comments or questions, regarding the action plan and regarding the strategic and action plans that have been presented. You may unmute and speak your thoughts. I think everyone is in the. I think everyone is already in the Eid holidays mood. That's okay. I am too. One little question with regards to the formalization, with formalizing informal settlements. What's to say that in the future, informal settlements would form in other parts of the city, and they then wait until the city government is until the city government finally gives up, and then formalizes their informal settlement. So what's to say that the formalization may not prevent future informal settlements from forming? What do you think of that? Can anybody help him?
Maybe to prevent the forming of further informal settlements. Obviously, the government must provide a good planning in the urban planning documents to ensure that those areas that are maybe susceptible to forming a informal settlements does not have the possibility of reduce the possibility of the forming of those informal settlements by providing like good infrastructures and also adequate facilities and utilities. And yeah, I think that's what I can say about that, sir.
No, you're right. But other than good planning, I would say another key word is law enforcement. I mean, you can create all the regulations you want, you can create all the plans you want, but if you don't enforce them, if you don't enforce those plans, then I think the plans remain as plans. They can go, they can go down the drain simply because we made this really beautiful plan, we made this really awesome plan, but the implementation and the law enforcement is not on par. So yeah, that's a very good response. Another thing about land titling, or the acknowledgement of the land titles, is it's one of the key aspects to what do you call this, to gaining access to resources, and services throughout the city. For example, when I first came to Brisbane, I was quote unquote homeless, in the sense that I crashed on my friend's couch for a couple of days, and then I moved in with another Indonesian household. And once I moved in with the Indonesian household, we drew up a simple contract, and that contract became a legal document for me, to apply for uh, to apply for uh, to apply for a bank account. So to open a bank account and to purchase a mobile number and access the city library services and so on and so forth. So I think that's the best illustration that I can give with regards to formalization of your dwelling. In Australia, they call it just give us your temporary address, and any document that shows your temporary address, we can confirm that it's a legal document, and we can use that as a legal basis to grant you the opening of your bank account and to apply for to apply for jobs and all that. So a little piece of paper really does go a long way, because when I was crashing from couch to couch, it was difficult to access those. The first thing they ask is, do you have any proof of residence? And proof of residence can be as simple as a non-formal contract between the homeowner and me as the renter. So yeah, again, the property title, legal title of the property can go a long way. I would imagine that, say, in the favelas case, once you formalize their settlements, they have they now have collateral to access bank loans, for example. They can use that title as a collateral for to gain or to access bank loans, and with the loan they can open up new opportunities. So that's a very big deal. So one of the key aspects in combating poverty, not only in North Jakarta but also in other places across Indonesia, and perhaps across Asia and across the globe, is to acknowledge their status, acknowledge their legal status, and empower them through the legal framework. So, anyone else perhaps have a different opinion to that?
Maybe I would like to add, sir.
Sure.
I think it's important as well for the government to be more flexible, because from the Favela Bairo program, I read that one of the key success of the program is the flexibility of the government. So they have conducted many policy changes regarding the urban settlement for those people who live in the favelas.
No, I absolutely agree. With informal settlements, you do need a considerable degree of flexibility, because those informal settlements may impede the formal planning process. And so if the idea is to formalize these informal settlements and not evict the residents without displacing the residents, then you'd have to find a way to plan around or build around that patch of land that they presently occupy. One thing I'd like to point out with the favelas that you presented is they decided to reforestate the areas that can't be rehabilitated. And considering the geographic character of the favela settlements, I can see that that's a very, very crucial thing to do, because they're usually placed on ridges and very steep, very steep ridges, very steep hills. So it's unimaginable if if somehow the topsoil decides to give out, and then a major landslide would happen. So yeah, the idea of restoring a little bit of environmental balance is there. You mentioned in your strategy as well that that environmental rehabilitation is part and parcel of your strategy and action plan. So yeah, it's not just about providing clean water and other utilities and amenities, but I think one crucial aspect of informal settlements, rehabilitation should be restoring environmental capacity, so to say. So good. Anything else? Anything else you or anyone else would like to add? Good then. Well, thank you again. Thank you once again. Thank you very much for that very comprehensive and clearly structured and systematic presentation of your strategy and action plans. You may end your session before I invite the next presenter.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry to say, but your voice is really, really teeny tiny.
is it clear now, sir?
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Putri Ramadhani, and today I will be presenting the case study of coastal customary land ownership conflict. And it is located in Rohomoni village, precisely in Central Maluku Regency. Okay, so just a brief recall to my case study. So the issues that is shown in my case study is, first is the dynamics of the power pattern possessed by clans. The dynamics of the power pattern by clans and subclans that is existed in this area triggered the emergence of unilateral land ownership movements that is carried out between clan actors up to subclans, which emerge in the form of land ownership conflicts. While for the next issues is the unilateral land ownership movement, and it is also caused by the dynamics of the power pattern that is possessed by clans that is existed in the area. For the next issues is the unclear boundaries and the lack of license clarity in the land ownership. And the outcomes of the land division are not based on land ownership license, but it is only based on the natural boundaries, which established by the clan leader. And as a result of the claims, there is conflict in the form of stealing land that is done unilaterally against the joint ownership. There are also recorded the physical violence among residents. A case study from the 1971 until 1972. So this case has been going on for decades. in Rohman Village, Haruku Village, as well as Slamet Village, it demonstrates the main source of land ownership conflict, which is caused by the unclear land boundaries and unclear land ownership license. This conflict that occurred was still ongoing because there was physical contact between the three villages in the border area. So in terms of the economic condition, according to the Maluku Regency itself, these areas are classified at low level, where the majority work as the farmer and fishermen, with an average monthly per capita income is for about 1 up to 2 million rupiah. And the next issue is about the environmental damages, which the source of land that's being cultivated has a high level of need, and it is utilized by various actors in which there is land belonging to the clans. In addition to citizens' unethical way of obtaining land, unethical methods are being applied by the fishermen in carrying fishing activities. This is done through the fishing bombing activities. This act of consumerism damages the potential of the sea as well as its ecosystem. Okay. So in this slide, I will be explaining the possible solution that will be suggested for the case study. Starting off with the best practice. In the next slide. So one of the best real-life example is from Kenya. In order to address the customary land conflict that occur in Kenya, the Kenya's government implemented legislation that concerning land ownership certificates. This legislation is supported by one of the community that is called as community land protection, which helps ordinary people understand the legislation and how to utilize it to legally secure their community land, and how to advocate for changes if it wasn't working. Moreover, with support from these community protection and partners, indigenous movement of peace and conflict transformation, and the Samboru Women's Trust, more than 20,000 people pursue legal registration of their lands over a period of time. These community paralegals accompanied team while they created bylaws, formed land management committees, and fulfilled other registration requirements. Therefore, land governance systems have become much more inclusive as well as transparent. Okay. So looking back to the best practice, therefore, I suggested some solutions. And since more than half of the world's population lack of meaningful access to justice, they are driven from their land, denied basic services, and intimidated by violence. Therefore, community legal empowerment is one of the solutions that could be proposed to address this land ownership issue. Okay, in the next slide, the first solution is creating community paralegals. Since law is the principle that everyone should be treated equally and should be afforded a basic remedy when something goes wrong, but all too often those promises are not fulfilled. It's stated that 4 billion people around the world, according to the United Nations, are excluded from the protection of the law. More people, marginalized people, disadvantaged, simply do not enjoy the same access to law, legal tools, legal protection that others do. And as a result, there are many in places essentially legally invisible. In some societies, there are many lawyers, but in fact, poor. So in many societies, people have lost any hope that the law can do anything positive for them. Legal empowerment addresses problems from the perspective of the marginalized, and it works from the bottom up and says, how can we help them to recover their place within the law and legal institution? And in this case is, for example, in the Kenya, legal empowerment methods were applied on behalf of the community to secure title of the land and property on which they live. Legal empowerment is about educating people to act as paralegals and communities. It's about building the knowledge and education and capacity of the community to act on its own behalf. It's about leveling the field to ensure that people who have been excluded from the law for so long are given a fair shake. So this is the community paralegal. It is a part of growing global movement for the legal empowerment. Legal empowerment uses law as a tool for change to empower citizens and communities as agents in their own development, demand accountability of the state, and foster the rule of law and peaceful dispute resolution. Legal empowerment offers practical legal solutions to everyday problems of the vulnerable and marginalized by using community-driven models, such as community paralegals, and by adapting and responding to local context, including engaging in formal or non-state justice systems. This network focused on legal empowerment. So instead of treating the communities as the victims requiring an expert service, community paralegals' message is that we will solve this together and grow stronger in this process. So the advantages of this paralegal is first, strong sense of the dynamics of the community. It also promotes empowerment by fostering legal awareness and agency of clients. It provides tailored solutions to legal problems. It is more cost-effective and accessible than most lawyers, and it also prioritizes a fair solution that engages a wide range of institutions. Even though this solution have advantages, it also have several weaknesses, which is the first one is time consuming because this community paralegal is come from the people in the community itself that is well trained by community-based organization that is focusing on law. So therefore, it needs some time to do some training. It also financially and human resource costly. And the next one is the community buy-in challenge. Also the legal buy-in challenge and the funding and sustainability challenge that will be faced by these paralegals. In the next slide. In terms of the community itself, the solution that is suggested is encouraging community participation in conducting community meetings to promote open dialogues, also working with the government officials and trusted community leaders that will resulting into mediation that is usually recommended when negotiation have come to stop and the parties believe they require assistance from someone who is not involved in the issue, or so-called as the third party. So that's the solution from the community side. And heading on to the next slide, please. Strengthening government role. Land conflicts are an issue that always arises and for which there is no comprehensive answer. One of Rohomoni village development goals must be seeking a solution to ongoing land conflicts. Due to the obvious consequences of the conflict that has occurred thus far, which have resulted in not only material losses, but also casualties. It is critical to be prioritized. Therefore, the role of government in delivering services to residents become increasingly crucial. particularly in terms of how to provide a sense of security in the middle of the society. Okay, so in the next slide, for the first solution that could be done is creating strategy and policy direction for customary land law. So what kind of strategy and policy direction? This is the formulation of a comprehensive plan on how Haruk Island District, Government of Central Maluku Province, can achieve the goals and objectives effectively in the future, including in the land conflict resolution. And the strategy should be drafted by each local government as a sequence of strategies from year to year for 5 years consecutive years, guided and explained by the policy direction. And the advantages of creating the policy and direction for this customary land law is protecting the rights of citizens. It also could create the atmosphere of security, and it also share legal certainty with citizens who might violate it in the future. So beside the advantages, it also have several weaknesses, which first is it is also time consuming, and it needs it costs financially and human resource. Okay, to the next solution. What the government could do is establishing a decentralized system of land boards of the development for public interest. So what kind of solution is this? This is a board whose tasks and responsibilities include resolving any disagreements that arise in the public interest. And how does it work? After capitalizing a decree, the land boards will work as mediators and facilitators, and also bringing the parties in conflict to deliberation to resolve the conflict. And the solution has several advantages, which is the first one is the decision taken have the value of justice, and the results of the decisions taken can benefit all parties. It could also unite different opinions. While the weaknesses that this solution have are first is the community buy-in challenges, and it also time consuming. So to address the weaknesses of all the solutions that have been suggested, therefore this solution needs to be working together, or as in integrate into one another, so it could work perfectly. Okay, so on the next slide is the strategic plan for this case study. The vision is establishing accountable, equitable, and sustainable governance of community land through positive laws and policy system. And the first strategy is to encourage community participation. The action could be done is conduct public education to increase community awareness of the law, also involving the community in every land governance process. The second one is developing community legal network through creating paralegal program that meets local needs to thrive on local supports. Also, the next one is to gain the trust and support of the local community and its leadership. And the next one is advising community on legal process and options for pursuing remedies. The third strategy is develop customary law policies and direction, which could create land ownership policy as the guideline for customary land ownership status. Also formulate the strategy to achieve the goals and objective of the rencana pembangunan jangka menengah desa. And the next strategy is to implement the land management system. Start off by supervising and reviewing the development of land ownership activities. Create decentralized record system for the development of land ownership activities. Also conduct land ownership policy evaluation for communities. In the next slide, I will be explaining about the action plan. And the first program is encouraging the community participation. And the goal for this program is to promote democracy and enhancing local capabilities in land ownership as well as development process. And this activity will be conducted from year 1 until year 2, which take about 2-year process. And the parties that is involved in this program is the local agencies, NGOs, community leaders, as well as the social community. The second program is developing customary law, policies, and direction. And the goal of this program is to achieve legal clarity concerning land ownership for each parties. And this program will be conducted in the second year up to the 6th year, which will take up to 5 years. And the stakeholder that has role in this program is the government of Maluku, as well as the collaboration of community leaders. The third program is developing community legal network. And the goal for this program is to form a dynamic, innovative frontline that is capable of extracting justice for communities. And this program will be conducted in the 3rd year up to 6th year, which will take for about 5-year process. And the parties that is involved in this program are activists, advocates, educators, researchers, public servants, as well as the local community. And the last program is the implementation of land management system. And the goal of this program is to ensure and maintain all forms of land ownership and development activities are run in accordance with the direction. And this implementation program will be conducted in the 8th up to 10th year, which will take about 3-year process. And the parties that is involved in this program is the government of Maluku as well as the local community. Okay, so for the attention, is there any question?
Thank you very much, Putri, for that excellent presentation. Unfortunately, I don't really have a lot of experience with customary land, and customary land disputes. However, I think in my limited knowledge and experience, customary law is always or almost always intangible and not as rigid, so to say, as for example formal legal mechanisms. So a combination of the formalization, an attempt to formalize customary law and to sort of institutionalize customary land is, I think, very crucial, very crucial to the conflict resolution. Again, I I don't really have a lot of experience, as I mentioned, on customary law, customary land, and the like. You may maybe you have a bit you might have more experience than I do in that sense. But yeah, overall, it's a very interesting case, and you were right to highlight case studies from Africa, where a lot of these things are happening as well. It's just too bad that our friend Peter is not here to confirm that with us. But as far as I know from the documentaries that I've seen, and some of the books that I read, they do have a similar situation to us here, with the customary law and customary land thing and the claiming of lands. Right. Excellent. Does anybody have any comments or questions? I know that this sort of conflict is very complex, and as you mentioned, setting up legal or paralegal mechanisms can be time consuming and very resource intensive. I think if you've organized any sort of voluntary action, you can confirm how taxing it is to get how taxing it is to get the gears moving. I think I lost my point. I had a point there, but I think I just lost it. A similar paralegal mechanism exists in Aboriginal communities across Australia as well, because they too have customary law, and they do have customary land, plus they have a legal formal framework that operates on that big island of theirs. And although there are no tribal disputes, but I think a lot of the times these Aboriginal or these native these indigenous paralegals, they come into play when, let's say, when they're trying to protect sacred sites, because a lot of the times when the government tries to extract resources from the land, sometimes the most resource-rich parts of the country is actually happens to be sacred sites, so that causes an issue. Another modern day, I think, for the paralegals part, another example would be the Residential Tenancy Authority, again in Australia, where they help settle disputes between tenants and landlords. So if you happen to be renting a home, renting a home in Australia, then if you, for example, if the landlord through the agent decides to increase the rent, and you have objections to it, then you report to the RTA, the Residential Tenancy Authority, and then they will help you settle that dispute. Not only rent, but sometimes also maintenance and such. So these legal bodies, or as you mentioned, the boards, they do exist a lot of the time, and but they take on various forms depending on the context. Yeah. How familiar are you with the area, if I may ask?
I'm not that familiar, sir, actually.
Okay. That's all right. But I was just wondering because the amount of information that you provided is quite comprehensive, and I just thought that you might have a relative that comes from that area, or you might have been you might have visited the area previously, and decided that this sort of dispute that you're presenting as your case study, you know, you're presenting this because the area happens to be a very dear to you, or something similar to that. But okay, well, nevertheless, I really enjoyed I really enjoyed the presentation. That I really enjoyed the case study because I don't get to, as I mentioned some time ago, I don't really get to come across a lot of non-Java case studies. So yeah, thank you very much for expanding my horizons and expanding everybody else's horizons. Anybody else care to comment or ask? No, it's the holiday moods. I'm sure of it. Well then, if there aren't any questions, then thank you very much for once again for that for your presentation. You may end your session.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Fernanda, as well as friends, for the attention.
Okay, so here's the code once again for those of you who happen to join in late. As I mentioned earlier, this is our last meeting before we go into the Eid holidays, thus the overall holiday mood. Other than that, we will resume our class on week 13 after the Eid holidays, which I think begins the holidays begin from the 29th of April all the way to May 6th. For those of you who happen to be for those of you who are not currently engaging in internships or exchange programs, I need to remind you that we are now shifting to offline classes. I think online classes are still tolerated this week because, again, holiday mood. But after the Eid holidays, I think the institution, I think ITS is expecting the classes to be carried out offline or physically. Again, that does not apply to those who are still doing their internships or perhaps taking part in their exchange semester elsewhere. Right. Before I end this, again, coming into the holidays, we will not see each other again until after the holidays. So before coming into the holidays, I would like to offer my sincere apologies for any mohon maaf lahir dan batin atas segala kesalahan dalam ucapan maupun perbuatan. Somehow I can't really get that out of I can't really deliver that in English. So ya gitu aja. Be safe and take care. I hope you enjoy your time with your families, and I look forward to seeing you all again after the holidays, safe and sound, all healthy and ready to push on to the last couple of weeks of this semester. All right, take care, everyone. Have a great day. Have a great holidays. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.